Awesome, and we are live. Hi, everyone. I'm Chelsea Jones, and this is the First Hangout. Our hangout is titled "The Other Side of the Coin: Being First Gen." And in this hangout, we really wanted to spend some time talking about what it really means to be a first gen student. So, not necessarily the academic side and how first gen students have to prepare for that, but all of the other different obstacles and the different issues and challenges that come up with being a first gen student. Again, I am the Associate Director of Student Programs here at First, and I have an amazing panel of students who are going to join me on this really cool hangout talking about their experiences of being first gen. So I am going to shoot it their way, and Khalil, you can start and give your intro.
Yeah, my name is Carlo Johnson. I go to Pitzer College. It's one of the Claremont colleges over in California, Claremont, California, about 70 miles away from LA. And I am involved in, I went to Panama over my second semester, excuse me, and I am involved in writing a piece to describe my experiences there.
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, hi.
Alex, you can go.
Oh.
Sorry.
Is that me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. Hey everyone, my name is Alex Montes, and I attend the University of Rochester in upstate New York. I'm a senior this year, and I'm a public health major. I'm originally from San Diego, California, and in school I'm involved as a resident advisor, as a student alumni ambassador, and I'm actually part of a fraternity. So that's always really fun, and we do a lot of community service, which I really appreciate. My main area of interest in terms of career-wise would be education, even though I'm a public health major. But they're both kind of interrelated. But I'm really interested in how people's socioeconomic status affect their outcomes in education and in health. So it kind of all works out together.
Nice.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. Courtney, your go.
Hi, I'm Courtney. I'm a senior at American University in DC. I'm studying law and society, and I was the student programs assistant at CSO this summer, which is really cool. And a couple of things that I do on campus: I'm a head manager for our university center events, and I'm also in a fraternity. It's co-ed, and and yeah, those are the main things. I'm also a resident assistant as well, so I'm very involved on campus.
Okay, awesome. So as you guys can see, our students are pretty amazing. They're going to great schools. They're doing great things. So again, this hangout is going to be really, really fun. I don't want to prolong it. We are going to jump straight into it. So our first question is, in applying for college, what did you hear about, first generation students, or did you even know what a first generation student was? And as a current first generation student, what do you see to be the truth from what you heard, or anything? And Khalil, you can take it away.
Yeah, so I was one of those people that were walking in the dark, so I didn't know anything about first generation students. I didn't know they existed, or their explicit experiences existed. No one in my family obviously went to college before, so I was the first. And then going, things that I noticed, I think some of the things that I noticed, some of the first generation students, they struggled with forming relationships with their teachers or their professors. Obviously, the dynamic between a teacher and student relationship in high school is much, much different from one that's established in college. So they had trouble with feeling confident enough to go to them to, let's say, ask for help with something, or combat them on, whether they got on their test grade that they received. And something else that I noticed that they are just generally less confident. So they aren't like they are kind of afraid of the bright lights that are at school, at least in my school, from my experiences. So like they aren't necessarily motivated to do a lot or get involved in a whole lot. They want to kind of take their time and bite off little pieces of things. So yeah, those are some of the things I noticed from the. first generation students that my paused.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, Courtney, you can take it away.
But yeah, similar to Khalil, before entering college, I also wasn't exactly sure what a first generation college student was. I also didn't even put on my applications to school that I was a first gen student because since my mom had attended like 2 semesters of community college when she first graduated, I was like, oh, that's some college. So going into college, I did not have that identification whatsoever. But I was part of a bridge program in which like most of us were first generation college students or like low income minority students, which was very cool. So just being immersed in that student group and that student culture was what started, which will then led me to be like, oh yes, I am a first generation college student because neither of my parents went to any type of higher ed institution. And I think also from there I started to get like fuel my passion for first generation college students or those who haven't had access to college. And so I'm sorry, I'm a little sick, by the way. And so from there now, like I've been learning a lot more about like the first generation college student culture and what that means, especially like on my personal scale and what it's being projected as on the national scale. So as Khalil had said, that a lot of students are, they're more shy or they're not as confident as their counterparts that aren't first generation students. And that comes with definitely like the stigma that we're constantly like we're failing or that, you go into college and you're not prepared and you're not as smart. So I think just for my own personal, what my own personal goals is to like put out that story that, yeah, you may not have been prepared in high school, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to fail or that you don't have the potential and that you can't be successful at the end of your college career.
Awesome. Thanks, Courtney. All right, Alex, you can take it away.
Sure. So I actually went to a college prep charter school from 8th through called the Pro School UCSD. And I got really lucky because they were really, really intense about college. So before that, I had no idea what college was, and no one had ever told me anything about it. But when I went to Preuss, I got in really out of a whim because my 7th grade teacher told my mom, "Hey, you gotta put him into the school. They're gonna put him on the right track. Like, there's no future in the school that we're at." And it's sad that my own teacher said that about his school that he was teaching at. So my mom and I applied. It was like a really intense application, almost like the common app, for colleges. And I had to write like a personal statement and everything. And my mom had to write her own personal statement. I had to get like 3 letters of recommendation. So it was like applying to college, but it was a really intense charter school. And when I got in on the 8th grade, they drilled college into all of our heads. And they made us take all the AP courses that there were to take. There wasn't a track for anyone. Everyone was on the same track, so there was no like remedial track or anything like that. Everyone was taking the same level courses. So it really pushed you to, be at this really intense level. What ended up happening, though, is that they gave us amazing support and everything, but they almost made it seem like, like you got this, like you get into college and you're going to be ready and you're first generation, so it's going to be amazing and everything. Once I got to college, it was a whole different story because I realized that I didn't have, even though Preuss was amazing and it gave me a lot of resources, I didn't grow up with the same resources that pretty much 99% of my peers here had growing up. Whether it was being able to go to summer camps every single year or have SAT tutors throughout high school. I thought my SAT score was pretty high, but when I came here I realized that it wasn't that high. It wasn't like amazing. It wasn't a 2400. And that's what I was competing against here, so it really made me extremely, extremely self-conscious. And my freshman year I had this huge period of kind of like mild depression because I felt kind of defeated, like do I really belong here? I'm not sure if I can actually take it. But I pride myself in my really inquisitive mind, and I love learning, so I immediately got into anthropology courses. And honestly, that's what would save me because I learned about things like cultural capital and social capital, and that people, and it kind of gave me a bird's eye view of my situation and the situation of other people that I go to school with here at the University of Rochester. I learned about privilege and how that plays into the role of my education and me as a human being. And that really helped empower myself because I said, well, you know what? Even though I wasn't raised with the same resources as these kids, I have just them, if not more, because I'm willing to look like an idiot in order to learn, and I was willing to ask all these crazy questions and go there and challenge people. And I remember freshman year, like, I was always that annoying kid in class who would bring up, like, privilege or how this affected that and how cultural capital affected me and not you. And, like, I made that comparison, not like in like a, what's the word, like a combative way, like in a attacking way, but just, like, make it known because I want to talk about it. But yeah, it's been a rough road, and now as a senior, I feel a lot more self-esteem as a first-generation college student, but there's still certain little things, like, well, not little because they're huge, like the GREs, nobody ever told me what a GRE was. My parents, they didn't go to college. And the university here has amazing resources, but sometimes they don't realize, like, what your background is like, that you literally sometimes, or at least in my case, I came from really nothing in terms of higher education. So it can be really difficult, but I think as long as you have a really curious mind and and just try to boost your self-esteem with that, then you can go far. I know because, like, I'm doing it now and I have the respect of my peers because of that, but it can be really difficult.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. All right. So just a quick heads up to those watching. I forgot to mention it in the beginning, but if you are watching and if you do have a question for any of our amazing panelists, you can submit a question. If you're on, like, Google Plus or watching on YouTube, you can submit a question and we can answer those questions for you. So that's just a quick heads up. Alrighty, so moving right along. So what type of cultural backgrounds were you surrounded by sort of before you transition to college, and how did that change for you once you got to college? So this question, it's a lot of questions within one question, so I'll just pose that one to you guys first, and then you can answer that quickly, and then I'll head on to the next question. So Khalil, you can start us off.
Yeah, obviously I'm African American, so my family are lower income, or have received lower income, and my mother is disabled, so obviously her income isn't much. So that's the type of culture. I was surrounded mostly by African Americans. I shared the same experience that I was lucky enough to get into a prestigious school where they tried to prepare you for college, and I earned a scholarship there.
Khalil, I don't know if you can hear me, but you're breaking up a little bit.
Before I got to college, it was 98% white. So
Okay. So not really sure if people could hear. Khalil was breaking up a little bit. So we're just gonna move. We're gonna transition. We're gonna move on. Alex, if you want to answer this question.
So my cultural background, I grew up in the south side of San Diego, next to the Mexican border. I was born in Mexico, actually, and lived there up until I was 5 years old. and then my parents decided to move to Mexico. I mean, sorry, move to the U.S., move to San Diego. So in San Diego, I grew up in a Mexican neighborhood, and we had family there. So that was really interesting because I grew up in a pretty homogenous population, but then when I went to Preuss was actually about, I want to say like 20 miles away from my neighborhood. So it was really far away from where I lived, and that was because Preuss was actually on the University of California, San Diego's campus, and that campus is in the one of the richest parts of San Diego, on the north side. So I had to bus every single day from the south side of San Diego to La Jolla, California, which is North San Diego, to get to school. So that was a crazy experience, and I didn't realize it back then, but I was going from this entirely different neighborhood and ethnic composition to a totally different one, and a very rich one, and a very just totally different. And this disparity in of wealth and cultures wasn't apparent to me until one of my mentors, Royce, who lives in La Jolla, came to pick me up in my house in Southside San Diego one day, and he said something like, "Yeah, this doesn't look very safe." And he's he's middle aged and he's white, so I didn't take a lot of offense to it, but I did think, well, what do you mean by that? What do you mean it doesn't look safe? I feel safe, but he clearly thought that we were kind of like in the ghetto or something. And that was when this was like sophomore year of high school, and that was when I started realizing that I came from a totally different background as the people who lived in La Jolla experienced. So, like I said, I went to school in La Jolla, so every single day I would go from my neighborhood to theirs, and so it got shocking for me. But because of that, it wasn't weird for me when I came to college and was surrounded by primarily white people, because I got acclimated to that very early on. But it's really interesting because even in anthropology, we talk about this thing called code switching, which just basically means like, how you act or talk around different ethnicities or different groups that you interact with. And it was so funny because in school, my school, like I said, was a charter school, and it was 90% Hispanic, like 6% Black, and then 3% Asian, 1% white. So then we all had our own slang. We all had our style, like Nike high tops or Converse and things like that, and skinny jeans. And then when I got to college, and it's primarily white people, when I say like prep shorts and preppy clothes and everything, it's things like that, or the way that you speak. It was really interesting. But because I went to school in La Jolla, I had experienced both sides, and it wasn't like hard to me to be code switch or anything. So it made my background less apparent to other people. And I didn't necessarily do it on purpose. It's just like I grew up with it, and I understood the differences in our backgrounds enough that I was able to like shift around. Just how I wouldn't talk to someone in my neighborhood the way that I'm talking to the dean of students here at my university.
Right.
But that's really interesting how that plays out, and most people don't think about it, but it's like stuff that's always running through my mind. So it's just something to be aware of. Maybe someone will think of an occasion here when it happened to them as well.
Your mic is muted.
Okay.
Okay.
Similar to both Alex and Khalil, I also came from, a lower income and majority African American and Mexican American neighborhood. And going into college, I did not think about race whatsoever. I didn't think it was going to be an issue, but mostly because I was surrounded by people who looked like me and like understood my culture, and like my financial situation. And so I was very naive to think that going to college I would be able to again find that type of community. Um, and that was not the case. Again, as I mentioned, I was in a summer bridge program, so that helped a lot in regards to making my friends and having that same like support system that I had back at home and people who understood. But we were just, a 1% of our like freshman class, so like yes, we were a group of 50, but out of a freshman class of 1,500, that's not many of us. Um, so that transition was really difficult for me, and I think it wasn't until sophomore year, like my first semester of sophomore year, and I had essentially became really aggressive in a class discussion because someone had mentioned had said a very racist comment, and I was so enraged the professor did not acknowledge it. And I remember going off in class, and I like after class I was like, I can't do that. I shouldn't let these types of things get to me, because at the end of the day, it's like they honestly don't know. Just like I came in thinking that I was going to be surrounded in the same type of community. They come in thinking that they're also in their same type of community that they came from. And I just remember calling my dad that night and just like ranting like no other for like 2.5 hours. And finally, like at the end of that conversation, though, it's just like it's all about education. And, my transition here, and also interacting with others who, hold certain stereotypes, and just being able to act as an educator and not let it get to me, was probably one of like the biggest things that I had to like make a transition to.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Courtney. Khalil, are you back with us?
I believe so. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, we can hear you, but we can't see you, but we
I
can.
noticed that. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, no worries, no worries. Yeah, so thank you all for your comments on this. I think the cultural piece and sort of understanding, your background and where you're from and transitioning into college is really key, and it's one big thing that a lot of first gen students are going to have to deal with. I know just personal experiences. So I came from a predominantly African American and Latino community. So I went to an HBCU, and I assumed like, hey, I'm black, they're black, we're all black, we're good to go. But that wasn't the case because just because we're all black, her mom and dad are like CEOs of companies, and I'm raised by a retired, my grandmother's retired and she's raising me. So just because we're black doesn't mean, we come from the same background, and I never went summering in the Hamptons, or like I've been outside the state a couple times and that was it. Like I've never backpacked in Europe as a teenager. I didn't do any of those things that a lot of, my peers had done. So I think the cultural piece is really interesting, and it's always something that students should be mindful of, because a lot of students are going into environments that they're not familiar with, but having the open mind, and wanting to get to know those different sort of perspectives as far as culture is concerned is always key. You never want to go into that situation saying, oh, she's white and she's from like, upstate New York or wherever. She doesn't understand me. You don't ever want to go into a situation like that. You want to be open-minded, and you would hope others would be open-minded to you as well. Alrighty, so yeah, so that was my quick little input. So yeah, we have a few more questions, and they're really, really good ones, and I want to hear what everyone has to say. So we're going to try to get through these really, really quickly. So was there ever a time, and this is for all of you, and Khalil, again, you can go first, but was there ever a time where sort of your cultural background differed from your peers, and it might have caused an awkward situation? Like, have you ever been like that token student in the classroom when like, African American history came up and everybody looked at you, or Hispanic Heritage Month came up and everyone like came to you to see what they should do? Like, has there ever been a situation like that that you've been a part of, and how did you handle it, and what was that experience like for you?
So I try personally. I try not to notice that I'm the only black person in any type of like crowd of people. High school kind of prepared me for that. In college as well. So I came in kind of knowing what I had to do, just ignore it and don't pay attention to it. And you
Yeah.
always like, and it's funny because one time we were at lunch and I took a second, I took a step back, and I noticed that there are like I'm the only black person in in this group. Like there's no one else who's black. And but to in addition, in class one day, we were my school is small. Our admittance is like I think we have 1,000 overall, or 1,500 overall. And in my graduating class, there may be 5 black men, including myself, out of 400 students in my graduating class. So it's always interesting. So I was in class one day, and I again was I was the token minority, and I hadn't noticed. I try my best not to notice. Which I think is a fault sometimes because then you're not taken by surprise. Then you're taken by surprise. So then African American history came up, and uh, my eyes widened. Obviously, I tried to like shrink down into my chair, but that's not the way I should have handled it. I think that I should be proud and be sometimes I don't want to seem quick to comment on something, but as the class progressed, there were conservative mindsets being displayed, and I had to be mindful because I don't blush because of my complexion, but I felt the heat in my face. It was it was really really hard to keep my calm, and I shared this experience with Courtney. But like it's really difficult sometimes because you want to represent for your people or for your cultural background. Rather, and it's you don't want to seem like that militant black guy preaching on the corner.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to seem like that, but you also don't want to seem laid back and apathetic. You want to make sure that they're getting the facts straight. Like you don't want to and someone made a comment saying that we were reading a piece of literature that W.E.B. Du Bois wrote. I think I might not be right there, but and he was writing in the time of the 1950s, and or excuse me, it wasn't W.E.B. Du Bois. I can't think of the writer, but the writer was writing in the times of like the 1890s, and he wanted for African Americans to receive all of their human rights and civil rights immediately. And someone spoke out against that, saying that maybe there should have been like some time. And I like leaped down her throat. I was like, "What are you talking about?" And, arguing back and forth, and like I'm like slowly getting out of my chair. But I think that also was the wrong response to that, and it's hard to be in the middle. Sometimes I find myself on the opposite ends of the spectrum, either too apathetic or seeming like that, or too combative. And it's difficult to be in the middle, and that's something that I continue to struggle with because I'm naturally like that, especially when it comes to things like that. So yeah, sorry to take that much time, but
No, that's perfect. And you touched on a great point. Like, a lot of people, the stereotype of especially black people is, we're angry, we're aggressive, and all of these different things. So when you do come into a situation like that, you try not to be the quote unquote angry black woman, or you try not to be the angry black guy. So you have to be very mindful of how you handle those situations. But granted, you did kind of leap down her throat, but
yeah.
you learn, you live and you learn, and you just you're able to tackle that situation a little bit differently. So yeah, thanks for that, Khalil. So Alex, you can take this one next.
Sure. So actually, I don't have any particular instance where it has gotten awkward or something, or I've been the token minority because people know better. And to be honest, like, no, seriously, like, they know that I would be very upset. I'm very open about that. But one thing that I did have an issue with, and that's relevant to this, is like at first it was really hard for me to take my own opinion seriously because of my background. And it just took a lot of, it sounds pretty egotistic, but it took a lot of like self-worshipping in a way to be able to like finally say, no, your voice matters and your voice like should be heard. But that's something I think that many first-gen students might struggle with. And when you're speaking on behalf of your race, for example, or your ethnic background, or your entire culture, it can be really hard to be that spokesperson when you don't believe in yourself very much just yet. So now that I've built up that confidence now, I do feel more confident of speaking on behalf of my own experiences, but then I always put out that disclaimer of, I'm only one. And my background is pretty unique, being that I wasn't born in the U.S. as a Mexican American. I was born in Mexico, so I have that culture in me as well. I was there in Mexico until I was 5 years old, and then moved to the U.S. So then I have that part of my culture in my little barrio, my little Mexican neighborhood. And then going to La Jolla and going to this upper middle class, mostly suburban neighborhood, and I have that culture in me as well. And now I have like this entirely different culture of like upper strata, like very rich, wealthy people that can send their kids off to private school in beautiful upstate New York. So it's like all these cultures blended in, and it's very hard to make sense of that identity. But in terms of that, that's all I would have to say. I've never been put in that compromising position by anybody.
Awesome. Thanks for your answer. So, Courtney, you can follow up.
Yeah, I definitely I was taking a cities and crime class when I was called out by my professor as the minority voice in the classroom. Keep in mind this class was also like fairly large for my school, so we had about probably like 35 or 38 students. Um, so that was very like I was very taken aback by that because I had never again like been called out in front of people like a minority voice and have been had to speak upon. I get and the fact that it was like a minority and there's so many people that are thrown into that category, that just having to be that voice is very uncomfortable, and I think just perpetuates the ignorance, instead of helping people out and educating. So I remember just like sitting there when he had first asked that and said that, and like because he had prompted a question with that um, comment, and I remember just like saying like a real quick answer and like moving on because I felt really uncomfortable, and I thought it made no sense for me to give this elaborate answer when he and his point of view and what he's telling the whole class is like, a minority voice, speaking on behalf of what it's like, to grow up on the other side of the tracks or whatever. Because we were talking about low-income neighborhoods and how like there was like more crime to happen there and yada yada yada. But I think similar to what Khalil had said is like trying to find that balance. Like you need to be able to tell someone like, you probably shouldn't say that because you don't want to know that like you were kind of like part of the problem. Like you didn't stop someone from saying that again. Like but at the same time, like you don't want to be aggressive when you're like, you shouldn't be like, don't you ever say that or da da da. So I remember like after that, I had gone in to talk to him about a paper. And at that time, I had told him that I felt like really uncomfortable when he made that comment, and that probably like going forward in his teaching career, he probably shouldn't single out students who he thought, because he also didn't know me personally, so he was also just going off of looks that I was a minority, and which I get it, like stereotypes, but just it's not a smart decision, especially with someone who has like a PhD. I just think as a professor, that's not something that you should be projecting in class. But yeah, so it definitely gets a little awkward, but it gets better. The next step of it is like going into your professional career in life and like dealing with that. So that's what I've been more or less encountering now, and less in the academic realm. But yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Courtney. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's always interesting to see sort of, how people react to you based on, what they see, as far as
Yeah.
skin color and different things and the assumptions they make. Like you said, Courtney, your professor just assuming because you were a woman of color, that you came from this type of background or whatever the case may be. And it's awesome, Alex, that people just know that you don't play those type of games, so they can't even try that with you. So that's great that you kind of have that established. So that's pretty awesome. All right, great. So moving right along. So this question is going to be interesting, and I'm actually going to start it off with a little personal tidbit. So we all know, most of us came from, if not all, came from sort of low income backgrounds in different neighborhoods. So, and this is something that first-year students are probably going to deal with. Not even probably. You're going to deal with this once you get to college. But being able to sort of your socioeconomic background affecting you socially. So I was telling Courtney about this not too long ago. When I was in when I was in college. So my friends, they were going to this concert, and I'm like, I gotta go to this concert. I gotta be there. And they're like, yeah, tickets are just like $100. It's nothing. I got it. We're going to go to this concert. And in my mind, I'm saying, I can't go to this concert because I don't have $100. Where am I getting $100 from? But out loud, I'm like, all right, cool. Yeah, I'll have the money by Friday. We'll go to the box office, get our tickets. We'll be good to go. So I remember calling she doesn't know this, and she'll know now. She watches this. Calling my grandmother and telling her that I needed money for books. Did not really need money for books. I needed the money so I can go to this concert. And I did all of that just to sort of save face. I didn't want to seem like the poor chick out of the group. I didn't want to seem like I came from sort of a lesser background, like financially we weren't able to afford fun things in life. So that's something that I did to kind of fit in and to be cool with these friends. I mean, talking about it now, they're like, yeah, girl, you should have just said something. But at the time, I didn't know. But I did that because I wanted to fit in. I didn't want to seem poor. So I lied to my grandmother, my Nana, and said I needed textbooks when I really needed concert tickets. Sorry, Nana, for lying to you. I'll pay you back, promise. But has sort of your socioeconomic background affected you socially and how you interact with people or how people interact with you? Khalil, you can take this one first if you're still there.
Yeah, definitely. It's affected me a lot, especially this year. Any money I get, I have to make sure that I, divide it up to make sure that I can have a little bit to help my family out. Especially last year because my parents, not my parents, my mom and my sister moved to California, along with me, to stalk me. I'm joking, but I had to every now and again send them some, money to help them out with whatever bill. So one day I was walking with my friends, and obviously I was the token. And they were walking and talking, and they were like, "Oh, you should really come with us to this concert, another concert in LA." But the tickets were like $200, and I'm like, and they're saying $200, and I'm thinking, dang, my mom might need $200 for bill money. I
Right.
that's like, wow, that's like a phone bill, or wow, that's like a gas bill. That's
Yeah.
what I'm translating money to, as they're saying it. And that's happened several times, and that still happens today, where my friends are like, hey, you should go do this or go do that, come to this, or last year when I went to Panama, I was incredibly embarrassed, but I had to ask for a lot of financial help, and going from my professor, and my friends were surprised because they obviously pay for it. I couldn't afford to buy a passport. I couldn't afford to pay for that process because of my financial background, and my friends obviously could afford to buy that and several other pieces of identification. But I had to ask for several funds from my professor, and honestly, it's a little embarrassing sometimes, especially when it's put on blast. But
Yeah.
I try and yeah, and but now I try and make a joke out of it. So if they're throwing out some ridiculously big number for something that like I can't afford, I say something like, "Oh no, that's bill money," or I try to make a joke out of it instead of sitting towards the back of the crowd, crying or something like that. But yeah, most definitely I've had this experience.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Khalil. Courtney, you want to take this?
Yeah, similar to Khalil again. it's definitely very apparent within like your first semester of freshman year because everybody's going out. Because what are they doing? They're trying to like get to know the city. I'm in DC, so when I say that like people were going out, people were going out. And a lot of the times, people would go out to like clubs. If you were over 18, and that would be like another $20, and then you'd like taxi there, and that would be like another $10 to $15, and yada yada yada. People would go out to eat all the time, and like, and that's very, I guess, yeah, important at that first stage in college because you want to spend as much time as you can with people because that's when bonds are being made. So if you're not there at the dinner, then you're missing out. You may or may not be as close to them, and that that's what you're thinking as a freshman. So then when I realized that like I was not going to be going out all the time and things like that, it divided lines in the sense that like I wasn't able to spend as much time with certain people, but then I kind of again like came into my own, and a lot of my friends that I had still from my summer transition program were in the same position as me, which was really nice. But I know that a lot of people, like one of my best friends now, who I didn't meet until sophomore year, had a really hard time with her friend group because of that, because she like got 2 jobs to like try to keep up with them, which is insane to think about, that you essentially are working 2 jobs so you can keep a social life with your friends. Like it's never that serious. But it feels that way freshman year, but it's not. And again, I think as I've progressed through my academic career here, it definitely has set the lines between people who are able to take, unpaid internships versus like someone like me that I need to either have like a paid internship or I need to work. Like I can't take, it's either one or the other. So like that has then like now kind of in a way held me back because there are a lot of great positions out there that I would love to work with and like organizations that I would love to get to know better, but I am not in a financial position to take on an internship that's going to consume the majority of my time, i.e. I can't work, so like where's my income coming from? So in those cases it sucks, but you make do with what you can. And thankfully like my school also has like a grant, so like if you are working in public service and you're not getting paid, we'll kind of like subsidize that to help you, which is really nice. So that's definitely how I've seen my own financial situation played out in college. And yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Courtney. Alex, you want to take this one?
Yeah, so I remember freshman year, it was still like the honeymoon period, I think like a month and a half in, and had lots of friends, just everywhere, all over campus. And there was this play put on in our theater, and I was in line with a couple of friends. One of my friends said, "Oh, hey, I forgot my wallet. Do you mind spotting me like $15 for the ticket?" And then I said, "Okay, but you have to pay me back, okay? Because I don't like I don't have much." But I just said it quickly like that. And then he was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever." So a week later, I find myself with pretty much no cash. I've drained my mom of like most of her extra money that she had also. So I went to my friend and said, "Hey, do you remember like the $50 that I let you borrow last week?" And then he was like, "Oh, you want that back?" And then I said, "Yeah, I kind of do." But it was really embarrassing for me because, clearly to this guy, $15 wasn't very much, but for me it was like the difference between me being able to go out like that next weekend and have fun with my other friends, or just like have to stay in for like the rest of the month. So that was like a really big realization, like $15 for me, because I didn't have a job back then. Now I have a campus job, so I can afford to do extra fun things now. But before, I literally like was depending completely off of my mom, and she's from San Diego, so I'd have to like call her every single time I needed like $20. So that $15 to me was a lot, but to my friend it was nothing, and he didn't even like expect that he'd have to give it back because it's like, well, what do you mean, Alex? It's $15. It's not a big deal. So when you come from a lower income background like that, it can be really difficult. But beyond that, I've made mostly friends that are part of the middle class or that are in the lower middle class that understand that money like doesn't grow on trees. And for some people, like I haven't really associated with many like ultra rich people. I know that they are here and they flaunt their wealth very, very well, but I've never like bothered to associate them. Just because in my own campus culture, they definitely have a very like laissez-faire like view of economics, and I know that we would clash. So, but I'm sure there's some awesome, beautiful people that are part of that class and campus culture here on campus, but I just like, haven't really associated with them.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Alex. Yeah, I think the socioeconomic piece is really, really important, especially for first-gen students, and just knowing, or having the heads up that, you will be walking into different situations. You will meet people who have so much money that they can sort of toss around, and then you'll meet people that are similar to you, and people who have to be a little bit more frugal and a little bit more, tight with their money. But I think despite, socioeconomic background and the differences, linking up with people and making friends with people who accept you for who you are and for the background that you come from. So not, making friends with people who don't judge you because you don't have $10 to go to Shake Shack and get a meal, and they'll say, hey, okay, we don't have $10 to go to Shake Shack. Let's go to Giant instead and buy some food and we all eat together because you get more food that way anyway. So, having friends that are able to do things like that and willing to really accept you for who you are is key.
Also, for me personally, it was a matter of I knew that I wasn't going to be able to hide the fact that I just didn't have much money coming here. So eventually, it just became very apparent, and I said it to my friends. I said like, "Hey, I'm not," because a lot of them thought I was trying to avoid them, or I was flaking for no reason, and it's like, "What's going on?" And I just have to say, "You know what? I don't have money for this. I really don't." And I think speaking about it kind of like empowers you because, and it not only does it educate those people that have no idea what your economical background is and how hard it is for you sometimes, but it also like gives you permission to just be open about it and be yourself, like you said.
Definitely, absolutely, yeah, and just being open. I mean, it's because it can be so stressful, especially when you're holding on to that and you're assuming that they're thinking that you have, that you in your head you're like, I need to keep this from my friends because if not, they're gonna think I'm this poor chick or this poor dude. They're not gonna want to associate with me. So that can be super stressful. But like you said, once you're able to say, hey, I can't go to the movies this weekend, or I can't go to that baseball game this weekend because I don't have the money for it. Being able to say that is super liberating. It's just like, hey, I don't have a ton of funds, but I'm still the same person. I just don't have as much money, and that's okay. So definitely agree with what you said.
You know,
For
that,
those of you, yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
you remember when that song "Thrift Shop" came out by Macklemore?
Yeah, Macklemore, yeah.
So that it's like little monumental shifts in culture that happened in society that really make a difference. Because when that song came out, I remember a whole bunch of kids here like stopped wearing like obviously designer like clothes. You know what I mean? And it's like we have the power to change culture as young people, and like it kind of made it uncool to flaunt your wealth. So a lot of people here stop that. Um,
Yeah,
and it's like I'm like, yeah, I shop at Target. It's like $10 for a shirt, dude. It's like it's like little things like that. It's silly, but
yeah.
it's fun to bring it up because we have the power as young people to like make these trends happen and empower ourselves. Yeah.
Absolutely. And Target has an amazing collection of clothes because I still shop there. So
Not trying
no
to.
worries there. All right, awesome. So we have about maybe 10 or so more minutes. So we're going to move along. So for the audience, unfortunately, Chloe has a little bit early. He had to go back to work again. He is a working man. He has to make money, and in order to support himself and his family and his education. So he had to head back to work. But we were really really happy to have him on. He was a great part of our panel. So he will be missed in these next 9-10 minutes. But yeah, we're gonna move right along. So, and this question is for both of you. So now that you're the first in your family to go to college, and both of you are actually current seniors in college, has your relationship or the sort of connection you have with your family and your community and your friends back home, has that changed a bit? Because I know a lot of times first-gen students, they come from backgrounds where a lot of the people in the community or a lot of their peers in the community don't go to college. So once that student does go to college, and let's say they come back their first semester, after their freshman year, and their friends are like, oh, you think you're better than us because you're in college, or you don't want to hang out with us now because you're in college, you think you're too good to do X, Y, and Z. Or I've even heard, oh, you think you're too good, you're acting white now, and different things like that, just because I didn't want to hang out or whatever the case may be, or they felt like we weren't the same. I wasn't the same girl that I was, leaving my hometown. So is that something that you ever had an issue with? So it doesn't necessarily have to just be with the community, but even your friends or family. Like, were there things that have been said or done to sort of make to have that sort of divide just because you are the first to go to college?
Mhm. I can start because I'm gonna lose this thought if I don't. But I realized this past year actually that college is a privilege. It really is. It's 4 years that historically mostly wealthy people have been able to, send their kids off to this kind of like limbo period of 4 years where they get to have self-exploration. They get to meet different people from all over the country, depending on what school they go to. But it really is this place where you have time to yourself. Working class families don't have time to themselves. So I think about that every single time I go home and I see my aunts and uncles who they're very proud of me. They're all like very, very proud of me. They put me on a pedestal. But sometimes they just don't understand my way of thinking, or they don't understand like what college is necessarily for. I know that they're proud of me, but they don't get it. And I'm just thinking, I have this huge privilege because I have these 4 years where I really just get to learn. Like, how amazing is that? But I know that because of circumstances and because of privilege, my family wasn't afforded those opportunities, and they didn't have 4 years where they could sit down and think about, the allegory of the cave, or what I mean, like, or the evil demon scenario by Descartes, things like that. And it's like, this is a privilege, and that's why I think, sorry, I'm just going to say it out there, but for conservative people, sometimes educating, minority groups is so dangerous because, or I worded that wrong, but educating everyone is very dangerous because when people have the time to think, it's gonna change culture. It's gonna change culture, and people are gonna be empowered. And I'm very proud of my family. They're all working class. But yeah, like, it's very difficult for them to understand what I'm doing, or for me to explain myself to them, because, like I said, they didn't have the privilege of 4 years of just thinking. They couldn't afford that. So that's why I'm so thankful to my school, because I often sometimes even feel guilty, like, what am I giving back to them? Because I'm not becoming an engineer, and I'm not giving them $300,000, in the next 10 years to build, like, a little, like, donating or something. Like, what are they getting out of this? And I try to think positively, Chelsea, and I just think, like, maybe they just really want me to be educated, and that's it, and have that spark in my mind and go spread it elsewhere. I went on a little rant, but hopefully that makes sense.
No, that was perfect. Thanks so much for that. Courtney, do you want to tackle this one?
Yeah, I kind of cringe anytime I run into someone back at home at like my local Starbucks or grocery store, for the purpose that I hate the question when it's like, what are you up to now? And then that exchange happens. And it's the conversation that, they didn't go to college, I've been gone now, so I'm going on my 4th year now. And it's just that like awkward pause of like, oh wow, that's great, like that you were able to get there, especially going from California to DC. It's like a very big deal because if you did go to college, you went to like Cal State San Bernardino, or like other local community colleges. And it's more so that it also like kind of just like hurts. Like it's just like Alex had said, I wish that like everybody could be educated because it is such a privilege, and I've enjoyed my time in college so much that, to me, to some extent, I think it's really unfair that there are peers of mine that have not been able to experience it because of just their financial situation. And so that whole dynamic I do not enjoy. But yeah, I think my family has always been very supportive of it. And especially like my grandmother, she had gotten an education back in Cuba, so she's, very pro-education, and is very happy that I'm in the university and like that I will continue in my education studies. But it's also like weird because going back home, my like church friends, again, like it's very similar. Like they either were homeschooled and now are just like they're not doing much. So also like going back home, I'm seen as like being more secular because I didn't choose the route of like staying more involved with my church back home or going to a university, like a Christian university, or anything like that. So it's like so sometimes I always get those questions that are like, well, do you still go to church? Or it's like, it's kind of very, what's the word I'm looking for? They're just trying to like dig in to be like, aha, college has made you like an anti-Jesus person who, just supports all the wrongs in the world and da 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 da. And I'm like, no, like that's not what college is. And like, I don't, and so like that is actually one of the things that I've come across more than someone like thinking that I'm better than them. It's just more that like you've become of the world by going to college, since like portrayed through the media and things like that. It's this place where everybody just goes and like loses all their values from home and, creates their own set of values, which to a certain extent, yes, I have been able to like take off the rosy colored glasses, and make decisions for myself and, create my own systems of value. But at the same time, what was taught to me at home is still very important though.
Absolutely. Yeah. So great answers from both of you. I know, like for me, when it came to I mean, I had a few issues with people in the community and some friends, but believe it or not, a lot of it came from family members, because once you go to college, you learn new things and you mature and you create your own way of thinking. When you're in high school, it was kind of like I'm under my grandmother's roof. Everything she says goes. So whether I believe it's right or wrong, I'm going to say she's right because it's her rule, these are her rules, it's her way. But when I went to college, it was a little bit different. I was able to see things through my own sort of perspective, and I was able to really, analyze different things and come up with my own conclusions and, how I saw the world. So even till this day, it's watching CNN with my grandmother is, she has one opinion and I have another opinion, and we'll like go back and forth, and she's old school, and that's cool. That's her way of thinking. That's how she does. But for me, it's difficult because I don't think the way that she thinks, or a lot of times I don't think the same way as older people think. And when I voice my opinion, they're like, "Oh, you think you're so smart because you have all of this and you went here and you're not that smart. You don't know anything. You're young." And so, and that was something again I still deal with till today. But I, take it with a grain of salt. People have their own mindsets. People have their own perspectives on life. I can't force anyone to feel any type of way. I just know, sort of my values and my beliefs and all of that jazz. So, definitely, but that's just to kind of bring it back around for those of you watching. These are some things that you're going to have to deal with. Coming home and being a different person, because you will be different. The point of going to college is not only to grow academically, but to grow mentally and professionally and all of these different things. You don't want to go into college. You don't want to leave college with the same mindset that you came in with. The point, it's 4 years of being able to grow, and you should never be ashamed of being able to grow. You should always, take that as a plus and be proud that, you're learning things and you're looking at the world in a different lens, and you're able to step back and have different perspectives that you never thought you would have before. So definitely don't ever feel, like it's a negative that you're not the same person. You're definitely changing, and you will change, and that is a-okay. Yeah, so I am there. We have one more question. And so a lot of what we've been talking about has sort of not necessarily been negative, but a lot of it is just the real deal. It's like, hey, this is what it is. These are the things that you're going to deal with while you're in college. Some things you're going to deal with. But I wanted to sort of ask you guys, as a first generation student, you've gone through a lot, you've encountered a ton of different things, but sort of what's kind of your most memorable moment that you've had in college, and if there's one or two things that you could give advice for to other aspiring first-gen students, or even to first-gen students in college now, what would that be? So the first question was, because I know I said a lot, the first question was, what has been your most memorable moment in college so far? And then also, what's one or two pieces of advice that you'd give to an aspiring first-generation student that's actually watching this video now? You're muted. Yeah, you can go.
My most memorable moment in college. That's a big question. That's such a good question. I think it would probably be as we've discussed that, like being a first generation college student, and just like being immersed in a student body that is, very smart and, passionate. It can get a little daunting and you can feel like you get lost. But last semester I had interned at the British Embassy, and my boss, who I initially was like super afraid of because he was this like military guy. He had been in the military since he was like 16. So could be intense at times, but he was just such a great guy. And at the end of it, because he moved back to England this past spring, and before he left, I remember he like sat me down and gave me this like talk about like self-confidence and learning just to talk about yourself and be proud of like your accomplishments, because it's not the norm. So like, and in the back of my mind, like, yeah, I may work like 2 jobs or 3 jobs like during school, but like to me that's like the norm. Like that's what I need to do to like sustain myself. And so like there's a part of me that's like, well, I'm not doing research like some of my other counterparts. And so like I always like kind of like dumb down my own accomplishments. So I think like after having that conversation with him, and him just, reminding me that like you need to talk about your story and be like proud of what you've done, and just, really analyze what you have done and hold it in high regards, is probably like my most memorable, because it also is like every day that helps me to like get through my days. And so going with that then into like one or two things that I could give someone that's going into the college process, that's going to be here. Yeah, be okay with your transition. I'd probably say that, because everybody, media tells you that like college is going to be like the best 4 years of your life, and it's a great time. Like, let me tell you, I would definitely do it again. But with that though, what they don't tell you is like the real hard work that comes into play. And so like, yeah, sometimes your social life, depending on what you want to do, isn't going to be super poppin'. It's just what it is. But you can't feel that like this is like I'm not doing what I should be doing because I feel like I'm not having as much fun. Like there is a time and a place for having fun and like putting in your work. And as you like go into like your upperclassmen years and you start needing to get those those research assistant positions or like internships, on top of like taking classes or like working, you will probably feel those times when like you feel alone because like your friends are all going out. But like keep in mind, like keep your goal ahead of you. Like eye on the prize. You didn't come to college to just like party every weekend and go out to eat all the time. It's definitely fun, and you need to take some me time and do that stuff. But don't be discouraged by not having that, like typical social life that society tells you that you'll have in college. Is that positive enough? I feel like that wasn't very positive.
No,
I'm
that
so
was
sorry.
that's super positive, and that's your experience and that's your
Yeah.
perspective. So I think it was awesome. So no worries
Okay.
there.
Okay.
All right.
Alex, be more positive than me, I guess. So.
Right. For me, really, it wasn't like a single moment, more as a like in a like sudden awareness of the transitioning that was happening with me in like my mental state about my identity, about my place in this college, about my place in the world, and about, and this is gonna sound like so pretentious, but like my ability to change culture and anyone's ability to change culture. Um, because it was like with little things like, we have a system in place right now, and you can see this in the media right now. Turn on MTV, that kind of glorifies and exploits in a way minority culture. You've seen it with the controversy of Miley Cyrus twerking and appropriating dance and appropriating other cultures. And I found myself in this place where I said, okay, so I'm not the majority in this nation, I'm not the majority in this school, but there is a system in place that, uses my culture as if it were its own, and only takes all the benefits but doesn't experience all the hardship, all the truth of it. They like to play, this race card because it looks cool, but they're not the ones that get skipped by a taxi cab driver in New York City at night, because you might look a little too dangerous. So it's things like that that made me realize that they can exploit me, but I can also use the system to my advantage. Some people look towards me simply because I am Hispanic. They think I'm cool if I dance a certain way, if I dress a certain way. And it's silly and it's like completely unnecessary. But let me tell you, like when I realized that, I feel so powerful now because I can make something trendy based on like the way that I look, which it's like it's powerful. So the system is using you, but I can use the system as much as well, as much as I want to as well. So it's like little things like that, and your ability to change culture and like manipulate culture. So use that to your advantage because I mean this world is like it's tough, and we have it hard, and I think. It is getting better for a lot of people of color. It doesn't seem like it in the news right now, but I mean, I think more and more people are getting educated, and you'll see that with education comes really like true power to change culture, to have a voice, and there will be that transition, which might be really, really rocky. It was for me. Like I said, I fell into depression in my first and second year because I just didn't understand my place here. I thought it was going to be pretty and flowery the entire time, like they show it on the brochures. But that's only one side of the story. And this isn't to like say that other people that aren't minorities don't have it hard at all, because everyone has their own individual journey and their hardships. But there are things that will affect you that are pretty much exclusive that will be exclusive to you because of your background, because of the color of your skin, because of your socioeconomic status. And it's important to not ignore those things or to not discount them because everyone else looks like they're fine. It's like, no, you're in this very special situation. Um, just like Courtney said, it is like a huge thing for you to be here. It's special. You should say your story. It matters, and with it, you can open so many people's eyes. And people are curious. People don't really genuinely just don't understand and will never understand unless you tell them how it actually is. I know that's really general, but I mean, just saying it how it is, it's saying how I've felt for the past 4 years here, and it does get better, and you will feel empowered at the end, hopefully, and if not, you're on your way.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for that, Alex. It's so funny that you mentioned sort of, people assuming things about you, or you're taking different aspects of your culture just because you know, you're Hispanic, you're African American. It just randomly, I remember the other day someone saying everybody wants to be black until it's time to be black, or everybody wants to be, Hispanic until it's time to be Hispanic. So sort of all of the positive pieces of the culture, whether it's, fashion or music or whatever it is, everybody wants to emulate that, and everybody's like bigging that up. But when it comes to the other side, it's everyone shies away. But yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there because it's, as soon as you said that, it popped up, and that, that someone mentioned that. But for me, really quickly before we end this, sort of the most memorable part of college, I would say friends. I know that's like pretty cheesy, probably. It's probably cheesy, but it's honest. I met some amazing, amazing, amazing people who were my friends then, and they are still my friends now. They have helped me grow so, 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 so much through college. And number one, like, I'm big on just being myself and being true to who I am. I'm not here to sugarcoat anything. I'm not going to do something the way you want me to do it to make you happy. Like, take me as I am, or, you know, just peace out. So I just really appreciate that my friends, take me as I am, and, flaws and all, like Beyonce sung about, flaws and all, they, they accept me for who I am. And again, they really helped me grow, academically and, professionally, but just even, as a person, and realizing who I am and what I'm able to contribute to society and to the world. They've just been a real major, major part of that. Um, so yeah, so that's sort of my sort of memorable piece of college. But we are going to end this hangout. So just sort of to wrap up all of the conversation, for those of you still watching, you know, it's a real deal being a first-gen student. And I really wanted to put on this hangout because, again, you hear so much about the academic side of being a first-gen student and kind of what you need to do. But the panelists have been amazing of talking about, here are some things that you're definitely going to deal with too that have nothing to do with academics, but this is going to be your life as a first gen student. Here are some things that you're going to deal with. It's just a way of giving you a heads up. So once you go into it, you can say, oh man, I remember in that hangout when Alex said X, Y, and Z, or oh man, I remember when Courtney said this, and them actually being in that space. That probably won't happen, but a girl can dream. But being in that space, you're not kind of shocked by it, or you're not like, taken aback, or it wasn't something that was thrown in your face. It was something that, you had heard about prior to your college application process, or even prior to stepping foot on your respective college. But being a freshman student is tough, but it's definitely worth it. As Courtney and as Alex have stated, going to college is definitely a privilege. Being the first in your family to go to college is definitely a privilege. Making yourself proud, making your family proud, doing something that society said that, oh, so and so is from this community, they can't go to college, or so and so, that neither of their parents went to college, so they can't go to college. Being able to prove society and prove the statistics wrong, I think that's amazing. I love proving people wrong. I get such a joy, and it sounds crazy, I see you guys nodding your heads, so you agree. Proving people wrong is awesome. Doing things above and beyond, and having people say, "Oh crap, I remember when I said so and so couldn't do that," and look at them doing that times 10. That's always great. And I don't want you to go to college just to prove someone wrong, but it's a little exciting sometimes, but but no, college is definitely a great place. And I just want to thank my amazing panelists, Alex and Courtney and Khalil, who had to peace out a little bit, but I really, really appreciate their candidness and their sort of very blunt and honest and open answers to these questions. Even in preparing for the hangout, I asked them to be as honest as they possibly could, and they did. They didn't disappoint me at all. So I really, really appreciate it. Thank you all for watching. If you if you really like this hangout, be on the lookout because we do hangouts each month. this one was really cool, kind of the first of its kind that we've done. So depending on kind of the reception of this, we could do some more cool ones. We'll see. But yeah, if you're interested in seeing more Hangouts, definitely head to the I'm First website at www.imfirst.org. Again, I'm going to thank my awesome, awesome panelists. They did an amazing job. They made this session. They made this Hangout. I had nothing to do with it. I just picked the good people. That's all. But thank you all for joining, and everyone have a great night.